Successful businessman. We were doing well. My wife and I were doing well. I remember being on vacation and we were sitting at a deck overlooking a lake, and we looked at each other and it was like, we made it. We're secure, we're happy, things are good, we made it. And then it wasn't a year later when I had my break from my undiagnosed bipolar disorder and we lost it all. We lost our house. We were homeless for 18 months.
Welcome to Sheila's Take, your go-to podcast for thoughtful insights on love, faith, health, fitness, relationships, and navigating today's challenges through a spiritual perspective. Join me, Sheila Dunbar, as we explore various aspects of life with a mindful and godly approach. Tune in for engaging discussions on all things meaningful and transformative. Welcome back to Sheila's Take, and today, joining us, I have the incredible Dave Mowry. Dave's story is one of inspiration, healing, hope. He navigates life with bipolar disorder and severe anxiety. Once a successful businessman, Dave faced incredible challenges due to his mental illness, leading to a period of profound loss. However, his path to recovery was nothing short of transformational, sparked by stand-up comedy designed for individuals with mental illness. Dave found humor in his own experiences, which in turn helped him regain control of his life. Now he teaches stand-up comedy and takes the stage himself, using laughter as a tool to connect, heal, and shatter the stigma surrounding mental illness. So today, we'll explore Dave's journey, his insights on using comedy as a catalyst for recovery, the impact of his writing, and his passion for breaking mental health stigmas. Welcome, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Sheila?
I am blessed. I am so blessed. And I thank you for taking the opportunity to be on my podcast. I know you're busy. There's a lot of things going on. So I really appreciate you taking the time to stop by and just share your journey and how you've come about to do comedy in the face of mental illness. So can you just share more about your journey with bipolar disorder and the severe anxiety, and what were like the turning points in your journey towards this recovery?
A successful businessman. We were doing well. My wife and I were doing well. I remember being on vacation and we were sitting at a deck overlooking a lake, and we looked at each other and it was like, we made it. Okay, we're secure, we're happy, things are good, we made it. And then it wasn't a year later when I had my break from my undiagnosed bipolar disorder and we lost it all. We lost our house. We were homeless for 18 months.
Wow.
I started my dark days and my 14 lost years. And, then my wife, she's the hero of my story. She stayed with me.
Mm-hmm.
Many other folks would not have stayed with me. I was broken and she stayed with me and she helped. And, she found I saw a little snippet in the paper about an organization that had a mental health organization that had a meeting on a Sunday night at a church, and she said I should go. And so I went. And that was the beginning of my recovery. I wasn't long after that when they asked me to volunteer, and then they asked me to work for them. And when I started to work for them part-time as much as I could, they brought in a stand-up comic to teach stand-up comedy to folks with mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why, but I thought I can do that. So I took the class, and hey, you're right. It was transformational. I went from being sad and lost and all those shame and all those feelings from everything I'd gone through and the trauma and everything we'd lost and everything that my family went through, to finding humor in my experiences. And it changed everything. It helped with my panic attacks. It helped with my anxiety disorder. It helped with my PTSD. And so that's how I found the comedy. That's the very short version of my story. Had it all, lost it all, came back, found stand-up comedy, found healing and hope, and now I teach stand-up comedy to other folks with mental illness and see the same transformation happening in their lives.
I have a question, if we can just go back. Now, you said you lost it all. Did you lose it all because of the mental illness, or when you lost it all, did you go into the severe anxiety?
Yeah, I lost it because of the mental illness.
Okay.
I had a complete breakdown, and that included depression where I just couldn't get out of bed and I
Okay.
couldn't take care of business. I couldn't do things. And my wife, Heather, did everything she could to hold it together and to work with creditors and to do all those things. And, the loss, we ended up a couple $100,000 in debt. We were out of, like I said, we were out of our house and homeless. And, it made the mental illness, the symptoms worse, and I was bad. I was in bad shape, but it was all caused by my mental break.
People, they take medicine, they see doctors, they do a lot of things when you do have mental illness and breakdowns, and you did comedy. What role does humor play in managing mental illness? Talk to me about that.
Okay, well, you've heard of cognitive behavioral therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and what that does is when you have trauma and you think about that trauma, you then are trained and learn to change the way you think about it. And it creates different pathways in the brain. So when the trigger comes up, you don't go down that trauma and have that PTSD or that anxiety or that panic attack. You
Okay.
go down this other way. And what the comedy did was exactly the same thing. For me, I would get triggered. I'd be in the car and I'd hear a song. The song would remind me of just about anything that was happening during the last 10, 14 years of my life. And I'd have a panic attack. I'd go relive that trauma and I'd have overwhelming anxiety and I'd relive it and I'd have to go home and I'd be back in bed and, that's where I was. So, but when I learned the stand-up comedy and started to look for the humor in my challenges, it changed everything. I'd be driving down the street or riding down the street and I'd hear a song and it would trigger a memory. And then I would say to myself, okay, where can I find the humor in that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Took me out of the trauma. It totally changed things. And I found out, I mean, who knew, but I found out I had a talent for writing jokes. I can teach other people. I can teach anybody. I teach stand-up comedy to folks with mental illness. I taught a class down at the Oregon State Hospital for people that were there criminally insane. So I can say I taught a stand-up comedy class to the criminally insane. So I can teach
Wow.
stand-up comedy to anybody, and I see the same transformation happening in them. I can't, and what I do now is I look for humor. I find humor. The more challenges we have, the more material we have for humor. You see that with comics, well-known comics. They've got their challenges and their hardships, and they find humor, and it's a coping tool for many. But the more challenges one has, the more material we have for humor, for comedy, and I had a lot of material. So I have uh, I have hundreds of jokes that I've written, but I had dozens of jokes that I tell regularly. I've got
Mhm.
jokes about anxiety. Part of comedy is like the jokes. There's a setup and a punchline. Essentially, a preface, a setup, and a punchline. And the preface or the setup is true. It comes from truth. It's based in truth. And
Mhm.
so, I truly was suicidal. I sat on a park bench with a gun in my lap, and I was just there, and thank God I didn't do it. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but I didn't. But so I was. But suicide is real. That contemplation, that having a hard time. But the rest is the creative part and the
Yeah.
surprise, and that's what makes people laugh. And that's what makes the humor so good is that it's based in truth.
What has been the most rewarding aspect teaching that to others with mental health challenges?
I can give you a couple stories.
Mhm.
One is Molly. Molly's mom brought her to a class, and she took me to the side and she said, Molly's suicidal. I'm afraid I'm going to lose her. Uh, but I saw this class and I think maybe it'll help. So Molly came in and Molly was a doctor.
Mhm.
She had her MD. She was practicing medicine and she had to give it up because of her bipolar disorder, her
Mhm.
mental illness. And so she'd lost everything that meant anything to her. She lost who she was. She always wanted to be a doctor. And so here she was, a failed doctor. She'd lost everything and she's in this class. And Molly started finding humor. We started finding humor in her hardest times and her challenges. And one of them was that one of her jokes was, "Little did I know going through medical school that the MD would stand for manic depressive."
Mm.
And just that simple, oops,
Yeah.
just that simple joke made a significant difference, and then the rest she just kept on going, and now she sees herself as a comic. She performs around town,
Mm.
she performs in clubs, she gets paid. And when you say, instead of her saying, I used to be a doctor, now she says I'm a comic. And then there's so, the rewarding, I mean, it's just amazing. And her mom said, it saved her life. The comedy
Thank
saved her
you.
life. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's rewarding. And then Michael came to class and he whispered. His mom brought him too, and he whispered. He's an adult, but he whispered. You could barely hear him talk.
Mhm.
And that's just how he was, or how he saw himself, or how he felt. And so he came to class, and he came to class, and he came to class, and we wrote some jokes for him. And I told him, okay, go home and go into the bathroom and yell at the top of your lungs, yell your jokes at the top of your lungs. And so he came back the next time and he was talking a little bit louder. And
Mhm.
then I told him, go this time, go to your garage and scream and yell. And if you think you're being too loud, you're just right. And so he came back and he was talking. And by the end of the class, well, he got up on stage and performed. It was just a miracle to watch it happen.
Yeah.
So those are just two of the examples. There's others. There's
And you
others. So that's
and,
it's rewarding.
and not only rewarding, you save lives. You save lives,
And I
right?
don't want to over dramatize. You can over dramatize that and whatnot, but yeah, yeah, um, yeah, it's saved lives. I know it's saved lives.
Mhm. You
And
that's what you did. That's exactly what you did.
yeah, so yeah, and I mean, maybe I saved my own life learning the comedy and then being able to
Mhm.
teach it. I pass it on and help other folks. And I also work with folks who have mental illness, doing peer support, working with
Mhm.
them. And had a fellow come in again. His parents brought him in, suicidal. They weren't sure he was going to make it through the week. And so he and I went in and we were talking, and I told him the suicide joke. And he broke down laughing. He just laughed and laughed and
Mhm.
laughed. And so he went from, when he came in, being morose and slow and all those kinds of things about depression. he left the room laughing and happy and uppity, and his parents had no idea what happened. And then I made him promise. I said, come back tomorrow. We'll find another joke. And then come back the next day, and then, okay, come back next week. And he did. And yeah, so that was, and you never know about the future, the far out future, but yeah, that brought him out of his suicidal state. So yeah, it's the power of comedy. It's the power of humor.
How does your work, both on stage and through your writing, help break down the stigma around mental illness? Now we talk about it a little bit more openly, especially in the African American culture. We really didn't talk about it or bring it to the forefront. But how does that work? How does your work, both, like I said, on stage and through your writing, how does that help breaking that stigma?
First, through the writing, I blog for bbhope.com, which is a magazine and one of the biggest blog sites. And the blog post's been read by over 1 million people. And the reason it resonates with people, they resonate because I go back and I go to that art place and I talk about that, living through that as if it's today, as if it's current. And people read it, and the most common comment is, OMG, that's me, you're telling my story.
Yeah.
And so that, and then they have other people read the posts. So they pass it on to parents or friends or family members, doctors, therapists. And so they, and what they say is, yeah, here's me. This is me. This is really what's going on. A therapist or a psychologist, you read about it, you study it, but you really don't know. And so if you read my book, OMG, That's Me, it's really, it's what it's truly like to live with a mental illness.
Yeah.
So shatter the stigma. And then with the comedy, people think folks with a mental illness, they have all sorts of, we're dangerous, or we live on the street, or we're, out of control and whatnot. With the stand-up comedy, here are people with a mental illness, and they're brave enough to stand up in front of a couple hundred people and tell their story one joke at a time and find humor in our experiences. And people have no idea what to expect when they come to the show.
Yeah.
But they end up laughing out loud and loving it. And so they see folks with a mental illness, they see us as being capable, and able and brave and funny. So that helps shatter the stigma of living with a mental illness. And I'd love the opportunity at some point to work with folks in the African American community. What a wonderful, I just think how much good material there is. So it's my selfish part about wanting to see all the great material there is and then help folks write you. I think it'd be a blast. I really think it'd be a blast. Yeah.
What advice would you offer to individuals who may be struggling with similar issues and feel alone in their journey?
I think, know that you're not alone, that there is, I spent 14 years, my last years, my dark days. I think what I'd like people to know is, wherever you are in your journey, if you're a fellow traveler on this journey, wherever you are, don't get stuck. It took me years to accept the fact that I had a mental illness and I was where I was at. And mostly it just pissed me off. But I finally accepted it. But you can have acceptance without resignation. Accept where you are at this point in time, but that's not always how it's going to be. And don't get stuck, and you will come out the other side. And then the other thing that I share that's not really mental health related, but is incredibly helpful for anybody is look to do something nice for somebody every day. And for me and for folks with mental illness, that gets us out of our head. That just gets us out of our head and all the spinning and the racing thoughts and all that kind of stuff. It gets us out of our head and starts us looking to do something nice for somebody else.
If you're doing something for that's yeah.
And then that's not only, I mean, it's good.
That should be
It's
for
nice to
everybody
do.
though.
Yeah, it is to
Yes.
everybody. Because
Yes.
it's a way, I mean, it's a way to keep a happy marriage,
Mhm.
even during the hard times. If you look to do something nice for your
Yes.
spouse or your partner, every day, no matter how small, it just makes a huge difference.
What do you think about the current culture challenges in society related to mental health, particularly with the youth mental health?
Yeah, a lot of what I do is focused on the youth mental health
Mhm.
crisis, I'd say crisis. And some of it caused by social media. I think some of it is exacerbated by just how much is on social media and people, thinking it's almost cruel in some respects to be on meds, to be
Yeah.
depressed, to be whatever. And then the other aspect of it is uh, they don't have anybody to talk to. They don't want to talk to their parents because they just don't. They can't talk to a teacher. The parents know something's going on, but they don't know what. They don't talk to the teacher because they don't want their kid to be labeled, and
Yeah.
it goes on and on. So it's a huge challenge. What we're doing is talking directly to the kids and to parents. We call it ending the silence. We
Mhm.
tell stories. We have young people tell a story about what it was like for them living with a mental health challenge when they were going to school, when they were young. We have a parent that talks a little bit about their experience. And by hearing these stories, storytelling is so powerful. By hearing these stories, kids understand and kids get an idea what's going on, and parents do too. And there's always, when we talk to the kids, there's always one or two that kind of hang back.
Mhm. Yeah.
They don't go out the door with everybody else that kind of hang back. And sometimes they'll say they got a friend who's going through something, or they'll say, hey, I'm going through something.
Yeah.
And sometimes they say, hey, my mom's going through something. Uh, but that's the first step in it. So, education is huge, shattering the stigma, and everybody gets depressed, everybody gets sad, everybody gets
Mhm.
anxious.
Yeah.
And um, identifying the different levels of those
Okay.
things.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's important. I've dealt with anxiety a lot, and at some point I I had to take medication, and it was just I didn't know why. I just worried about everything. I mean everything, just silly things that a normal person wouldn't even think of, or if a situation happened, I would worry myself because even though it turned out okay, I would worry because what if it didn't turn out what if it hadn't turned out okay? And those were the type of things, thank God I was able to mm, get through that and get past it, and I'm not gonna lie, I at one point, my doctor did prescribe medication for me to help me with it. So I wonder if I could have used some laughter. And then now I look at it, I'm thinking some of these things were so silly. But to me, it was like it was the world because this is something that this happened, and what possibly could have changed if it didn't go this way. I remember an incident when my young son, we were in a store and he ran out. You know how they have the doors that automatically, and he's running, and I'm trying to catch him, and he runs out the store. And thank God someone else caught him, but he ran out into the parking lot. and I record him. But in my mind, I'm thinking, oh my God, even years later, I think, what would have happened if a car hit him? But instead of saying, thank God someone caught him and the car didn't hit him. But these are things,
That,
this is what I worried about.
that's great stuff for a joke because your kid's running out into the parking lot and he runs into a car and dents it. So then you got to pay
You
for
got to
it.
pay for the insurance of the car, you know?
There you go. So yeah, there you go. Your kid broke. Yeah, he hits the car and breaks the car.
But definitely understand how people, it does happen. And I thank you for helping those with mental illness. Um, so what does the future look like? What goals do you have for your outreach and comedy? How do you plan to expand your impact in this field?
Yeah, I think doing the podcasts,
Mhm.
just getting the word out that a couple things. We are regular folks. Shatter the stigma that um, healing with humor is real. And people that are fellow travelers, folks that are living with a mental health challenge, when they see it or hear it, they can say, hey, you know, there's hope. And then they can start
Right.
looking for some humor in their experiences. I'm working on a book. It's a workbook, CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, healing with humor workbook. And so I'm going to be writing a workbook on how to find the humor in our hardest experiences, how to write a joke, the structure of a joke, and so people can have that tool to take their experience, their worst experience, whatever it is, and find some humor in it and follow the formula so that they can find the humor in it so
Yeah.
that they can write a loud funny joke and so then they can tell that joke and that that uh, it heals the trauma. It makes a huge difference in
It
the
makes a
trauma.
huge difference. It definitely does. It definitely does, Dave. What are you grateful for?
First of all, for my wife, I said she's the hero of my story, and she truly is. I'm grateful that I've lived as long as I have, so I can make a difference and help other people. Grateful that I've got a sharp mind and I'm able to write a book and write a new book that's going to make a difference in people's lives. And grateful that I can come up with jokes and share them with people and shatter the stigma.
I want to know how my listeners can get in touch with you if they want, if they have someone who they'd like to reach out to you, take your class. How would they be able to get in touch with you?
The best way to do it is Facebook and just Dave Mowry on Facebook. Just do a Dave Mowry search and leave me a message there. I answer all my messages, and that's the best way to do it. If I'm also on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's a good way to do it. I answer all my messages. So yeah, if anybody's out there, if you just want to message, if you just want to talk, if you just want to email, if you want to find out more about humor, whatever it is, let me know. I'm happy to. I'm just an open book, and once I'm out there, my story's out there. There's nothing to hide at this point.
I thank you so much, Dave. And as we wrap up today's episode, I just want to say, Dave, your ability to transform pain into comedy not only aids your journey, but also lights the way for countless others facing similar battles. Through your performances and writings, you are helping to dismantle the stigma surrounding mental illness and replacing silence with shared laughter and understanding. I hope today's conversation leaves my audience inspired to approach your challenges with a sense of courage and hope. Don't forget to subscribe to Sheila's Take, leave a review, and share this episode with anyone who needs a dose of inspiration. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and remember it's okay to find humor as part of your healing journey. Until next time, remember to embrace the journey, build lasting connections, and step boldly into all that life has in store for you. I'm your host, Sheila Dunbar. Blessings to you.